Thank you, everyone. And again, thank you, everybody, for coming this morning. Really appreciate it. Also, just want to remind all the speakers, if you can speak into the mic, we are live streaming and webcasting this event. And so, and everything is going through this mic, so that way it gets streamed and everybody can hear. And also, if you can repeat any questions that are asked, we will have mics going around, but just in case, that would be extremely helpful as well. Again, thank you all for joining us, and thanks to all the CEOs and to all the vendors we're working with as well who have really enabled this event to occur. This is, I believe, our fifth sort of portfolio day event where we have our portfolio companies come and present. And it's really interesting because the common feedback that comes from all of these events is, how can I invest in these companies personally? And it's something that we've been talking about for a long time, and we realize, we're excited by these companies, so it makes a lot of sense that people would like to have additional exposure to being able to invest in them directly, and not just through Harris & Harris Group. Harris & Harris Group provides a great diversified access to these, but if individuals want to get access to some of these companies individually, why not? It's funny. There's been a big regulatory hurdle to be able to do so, but the key is that we can do this now. And why? Because we have a structure that works. We've talked previously about our structure as a business development company. It turns out that there's being an internally managed business development company, which is what we are. There is an advantage in that we can set up these structures easily without having to go through a long regulatory process. We can advertise. We could take out a billboard in Times Square. Why? Now, this didn't exist before the Jobs Act, and specifically something called 506C, which allows us to do mass solicitations publicly of a private offering. The issue is that we're restricted to taking capital from only accredited investors. I'll talk about that in a moment. But we can advertise, and we have been advertising. We'll talk about that. And the other is that to be able to facilitate all of this, you also have to do accreditation checks. There's a lot of documentation, and there haven't been a lot of groups out there working to help service this portion of the market in a way that was beneficial for the market as well as complemented what our needs. And we have a phenomenal partner who's here today, representatives from TriPoint Global Equities and their online banking platform, Bank. That allows us to handle these offerings electronically. So we now have the components, and we put all of these together. And what have we done? We've formed something called H&H Co-Investment Partners, LLC. What is that entity? It's an entity that is managed by Harris & Harris Group. Harris & Harris Group is the managing member, and it was built to facilitate co-investments by our shareholders and other interested parties in our portfolio companies. We're not offering the securities of the companies themselves. Specifically, we are offering the opportunity to invest in a special purpose vehicle that we form for each portfolio company and each financing within that portfolio company. Unfortunately, we would love to open this up to everybody, but the problem is right from a regulatory perspective, we cannot. And so you have to be an accredited investor, which by the very simple terms, and there's a variety of ways that you can qualify, but the most simple ones are you have to have at least annual income of $200,000 for individuals, $300,000 for couples, and over the past 2 years, and really reasonably believe that you can have it over the next year, or you have $1 million of investable assets that do not include your primary residence. As I said, we're doing all of these through issuing separate series for each LLC within the LLC for each investment. Harris & Harris Group is the manager of it, and so from a portfolio company perspective, they like it. I'm going to speak for you guys because now you're getting more capital coming in from a variety of sources, but it's Harris & Harris Group that's interfacing with those companies. And so now you have an entity where, and our companies oftentimes get inbound requests to invest, but for a portfolio company to take on a lot of small investors, it's very cumbersome for them to have to manage that. We can now manage that. And the other is that we have preemptive rights to invest in all of our portfolio companies for the most part. We oftentimes don't have the capital base to be able to take advantage of those entire preemptive rights. we can transfer those to these entities to be able to allow our shareholders and other investors to take advantage of what we're not able to because it is a controlled entity. Why is this beneficial? Harris & Harris Group, from non-H&H shareholders, we'll have management fees coming in from managing that capital. We share in the profits for both shareholders and non-shareholders. It allows us to maintain our ownership and increase our ownership and continue to have influence over what's going on in the companies and working with management, but have that ownership influence behind it. If you are a shareholder of the Harris & Harris Group stock at the date we announce the offering, or the day before, then you get better economics for these offerings. And so we're hoping that it's also an incentive for people to buy and hold Harris & Harris Group stock. And it's an additional source of capital for our portfolio companies. We become an extra marketing arm for all intents and purposes to help complement the time and efforts that our portfolio companies, CEOs, and everybody are spending on raising capital, which is extensive. How does it work? Very simply, we put out a press release. We say we're announcing an offering, and that for a specific portfolio company and a specific round of financing of that portfolio company. We usually keep it open for about 1 to 3 months. And then and during that time, investors are able to review PowerPoint presentations. We do webinars. We have other information from the portfolio companies and what they put out publicly. We have a PPM, a private placement memorandum, all of the subscription materials. All of this is available online through Bank, which is the online platform of TriPoint. And during that period, we verify accreditation status, funds are deposited escrow, we close. At the closing, then we have, usually the way we structure these is that the capital will then be invested into that round of financing of the portfolio company shortly after closing. But we also may do some ones where it's basically we're setting up a capital pool for that next round. When it does occur, we now have that capital pool ready to go to invest. And so usually, days up to 12 months, but generally expected to be more like days or weeks to go into those rounds of financing. And, the H&H shareholders, as I said, if you're immediately prior to the date of that announcement, you receive priority should it be oversubscribed, because we can only take 99 investors due to regulations. Reduced placement agent fees, no other upfront costs. Harris, you're already paying expenses for being a Harris & Harris Group shareholder. We're going to bear those for you, and then we get carried interest once so 20% comes back to Harris & Harris Group of gains, only gains on the investment once you get your entire capital back. So we are in the market today with an offering, and that is related to a co-investment opportunity in D-Wave Systems. You're going to hear D-Wave speak today. Vern Burnell, the CEO of D-Wave, and Dan Kors, CFO from D-Wave, are in the audience and here today. It's to invest in the next round of financing of the company, which is expected to close by the end of this month, hopefully. That's when we're targeting our close, obviously. Minimum investment $25,000, and you do need to be an accredited investor. If you're interested in looking at this, number one, feel free to speak to me. As I said, Mark, raise your hand. Mark's and Ricky Solomon from TriPoint, feel free to reach out to those guys. They are here today, and they're, as I said, our partners in this offering. They can help answer any questions. Go to bank.co. This is a phenomenal platform that we plan to work with and partner with these guys for being able to do public and private offerings in a way that historically has not been open or easily facilitated. And we plan to take advantage of it and work with these guys on multiple of these efforts. So it's been a great partnership. Again, you can contact myself or Mark Olenowitz, who's the CEO of TriPoint as well. Anytime if you have any questions on the D-Wave offering. Again, we are offering investment into a special purpose vehicle that will then invest in D-Wave. D-Wave is not issuing those securities directly. I just want to, for regulatory purposes, be clear on that. And the other thing we want to make sure to announce is that the next offering, we're working right now with HZO. You're going to hear from HZO right after I'm done here. And we're really excited about it, where HZO is headed as well. We're expecting to launch the co-investment vehicle for this in the beginning of July. and you'll be able to soon be able to visit bank and start to indicate interest, and then we'll follow up with you as time gets closer to being able to launch, or when we launch that vehicle. But with that, so that we get back on schedule, I'm going to hand it over to, and I'm around all day, obviously, if anybody has any questions on the co-investment vehicles, we would love to discuss them with you. You can always reach me as well by email or cell phone, and we look forward to hopefully this being a really interesting expansion of our of what we can provide for shareholders and other interested investors, and be helpful to our portfolio companies. And with that, I'm going to invite Michael Bartholomews, the CEO of HZO, to come up and talk about his exciting company.